Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
6:07 now on this 17th day of December, just 1 week from Christmas Eve, and we are feeling it. Coming up at 6:35, Cal Thomas will join us at 7:05. Dr. Matthew Spalding on his brand new book about our founders. He, of course, is a professor at Hillsdale here in D.C. 8:05, Byron York, and at 8:35, Greg Pemberton, the D.C. Police Union Chief. Talk about that crime data. He was ahead of the curve on that, about cooking the crime books. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Julie, have you ever given an exclusive to Vanity Fair by any chance?
No, I have not. I have not.
If someone called you from Vanity Fair and said, hey, we want to just sit in several interviews and ask you all about, Larry O'Connor and Company and WMAL and everything you know about Independent Women's Forum and the people who work there, and just you can trust us. Don't worry. Just would you ever return that call?
No, it's a trap.
It's always a trap. That's why what Susie Wells, the chief of staff for Donald Trump, did was so inexplicable. You got to Sherlock Holmes this, Julie. You got to eliminate all of the things that are impossible, and then whatever is left over has got to be the probable solution. It's impossible to think that Susie Wells is naive about politics and the media. It's impossible to think that Susie Wells is ignorant and ill-informed. It's impossible to think that she just makes rash decisions and is not rather calculating and actually knows what she's doing. So what are you left with? Susie Wells knew full well that this would be a disaster, but thought that in the long run this would actually serve her or serve the president politically. I don't know. I mean, I'm always open to the idea of 4D chess. But yesterday, all of Washington, D.C. was abuzz by the fact that Susie Wells sat for 11 separate interviews for a piece in Vanity Fair. And the whole idea was, inside the Trump White House. And let me give you a hint, anybody who works for the White House. It's not ever good to know what goes on inside a White House.
No.
Until well after the presidency.
Yeah, it's like dating. Like, some mystery. Like, keep some mystery there, right? Don't go to the bathroom with the door open. Okay? Like,
that's right.
Right?
Go into
keep
the other
some
room.
Things to yourself.
Yes.
And I am really disturbed by this. She is not a a dim woman. She is not naive. She's been around the block. She gets politics. Yeah. I do think it's a combination of things. First of all, I also heard that they were told that this was part of a book. The research for a book, right? And when you are researching books, when you're doing a long form piece or a book, it does usually take a series of interviews. So I can see that. Don't sit down if they're writing a book either. Like, that doesn't make it better. It's just, I have heard that they didn't think this was going to be some Vanity Fair spread. They thought it was going to be a bigger project, but I do think ultimately this is much simpler. It is a matter of who doesn't want to be in Vanity Fair, who doesn't want an Annie Leibovitz photo spread, right? That you can hang your hat on, right? I mean, talk about I've arrived, right?
but they don't.
I know.
They don't do that for conservatives.
I know, but I have to wonder because look. This White House, I mean, compared to Trump 1, this White House has had some great media moments and some great media coverage. Okay. And one has to wonder if they thought, oh, no, this is the time. They're going to give us a fair shake. And then we're going to have this great Vanity Fair. It'll be good for us. It'll be great, right? It'll normalize us. It'll make us more mainstream. I do think there's a bit of that going on, Larry. I think.
Yeah, all right.
I think there's this sort of like ever-present hope that they'll be nice to us, right?
Perhaps. And let's face it, President Trump, who, by the way, can go talk to whoever he wants to because he's President Trump. He doesn't shy away from, walking into the lion's den and talking to anybody, anytime, anywhere. In fact, I think he relishes talking to the New York Times or George Stephanopoulos or whatever and going right at them. Susie Wiles is not Donald Trump. Nobody in this administration is Donald Trump, and they shouldn't act surprised. I think the thing that bothered me the most was Susie Wiles taking to Twitter with indignation, saying, well, I'll read this. She says, the article published early this morning is a disingenuously framed hit piece on me. Why are you surprised that they framed this in a disingenuous way?
I know.
Significant context was disregarded, and much of what I and others said about the team and the president was left out of the story. Again, of course.
Shocking.
That's exactly what they'll do.
That's what they do. Yeah.
Okay, we've been somewhat charitable, but obviously skeptical of what's going on here. Let me give you my favorite sort of, I don't want to say conspiracy theory, but political strategy overlay to this whole thing. Let's say you're Susie Wiles. Let's say you are a seasoned political operator, and the base of your operations for the majority of your career has been the state of Florida. In fact, if you look at the Trump administration, it is filled with Susie Wiles Floridians. Every time there's a vacancy, everybody looks at the Sunshine State to see who Susie Wiles will recommend for the job. A lot of people were surprised that Marco Rubio was named so quickly as Secretary of State. Knowing his long relationship with Susie Wiles, it shouldn't have come as a surprise. Ditto Pam Bondi for Attorney General. So, hear me out. This is a political theory that I heard floated yesterday about what's really at play here. If you disregard the idea that Susie Wiles is naive or stupid or doesn't understand the lay of the land with politics and media, and instead think that Susie Wiles is a very crafty, smart, and some might even say Machiavellian political operator, think about this for a minute. People are already talking about 2028. Who is in the best position from the Trump administration to be the Republican nominee for 2028? Julie Gunlock. Who?
Vance.
J.D. Vance. Absolutely. Goes without saying. It's a no-brainer. Is J.D. Vance a Florida Republican?
I get where you're going.
I've got another question for you. I'll be more specific. Is J.D. Vance Marco Rubio?
He's not.
Who would be the number one rival to J.D. Vance for that Republican nomination from the Trump administration?
Marco Rubio.
That would be Marco Rubio. And again, I'm not casting any aspersions on Marco Rubio in any way whatsoever. I think that when you have a long-time political relationship with people, people do things for you without you ever asking or needing to ask. Who comes off looking the worst in this Vanity Fair article? From my estimation, I believe the things that were most damaging were the things said about J.D. Vance. Now, J.D. Vance, for his part, he defended Susie Wiles yesterday. He made a joke about this. He was at a event in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and he joked about because she said that he was a conspiracy theorist for the past decade, that his change from being a Trump critic to being a Trump ally was purely political. These are all of the most vulnerable spots that J.D. Vance has right now. And Susie Wiles just drilled into those things. And who benefits from that? Marco Rubio and the Florida Republicans. I'm just saying I think it's a fascinating...
I'm just saying.
And this is it's a fascinating political observation that I heard from a very, very well-sourced individual yesterday as all of this was falling out. You gotta remove the possibility that Susie Wiles is stupid or naive. Knowing that she's not, then what have you got left? All right, we've got more on this, and I want to illustrate exactly how deceitful this New York Times hit was in a moment. But first, it's 6:15, WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes, first on the fives. Will people be whispering about this in the White House today? You bet they will.
There's a reason I'm staying quiet. I'm going to go to the Christmas party.
Watch your back, JD.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So there was another weird sort of media jujitsu on this whole thing yesterday. Julie. And I do listen. This story is made for this radio program because we love criticizing the media, and we love sort of observing how the media and political operators interact, and sort of the sausage that gets made here in Washington, D.C. And this is just full of gossip and rumors and headlines and disclosures and secrets revealed and betrayal, and it's what makes Washington, D.C. hum, especially around Christmas. So one of my favorite parts of this little bizarre media jujitsu is that the exclusive interview was given to Vanity Fair, and most specifically, by the way, you mentioned that it may have been for a book. The author of the Vanity Fair article is a guy named Chris Whipple. His specialty is interviewing chiefs of staff. He has written a book about chiefs of staff called The Gatekeepers, focusing on chiefs of staff, I think going all the way back to the Nixon administration. So if you're a chief of staff in the White House and Chris Whipple calls and says, I want to do a series of interviews with you, it's kind of like, oh, this is my legacy. He's going to be the person. It's like when Bob Woodward calls. It's one of those things. Now, I don't know whether Susie Wiles knew that this stuff was going to be in a Vanity Fair article as well, but I guarantee you she didn't know that Vanity Fair would then give an exclusive to the New York Times. That's what's weird. Everyone's like, people were confused yesterday. It's like, why did Susie Wiles talk to the New York Times? She didn't. Right. She talked to Vanity Fair, but then Vanity Fair, to promote their article, gave an exclusive to Peter Baker at the New York Times, and Peter Baker then wrote an article about the article. Yeah. Get it? Yeah. Which is bizarre. It's like Fox News getting an exclusive from ABC News, right? Yeah. I mean, what is that all about? It's like McDonald's giving an exclusive sneak peek to Burger King about their new burger. It's like, why? I thought you're supposed to be competitors, but they're not, because they're all on the same team when it comes to damaging Donald Trump and his presidency. So one of the biggest, most damaging takeaways from the New York Times article was that Susie Wiles said Donald Trump had the personality of an alcoholic, right? That was, that's the headline. It was everywhere. I saw it in the chyrons. I saw it plastered all across the internet, Julie. But, of course, if anybody actually uses their brain and thinks for a second, it's like, wait, that makes no sense. Donald Trump famously doesn't drink. Everybody knows that about him. So what exactly is she saying? There's got to be more to that, right, Julie? There's got to be more to that.
Yep.
Well, there is more. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say something rather controversial. The Vanity Fair article isn't actually that bad. I mean, there's some stuff in there that shouldn't have been said, but it's the New York Times summary of the Vanity Fair article that's bad. And that's all anybody read yesterday.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, there's another example of this. J.D. Vance, while taking his photo, he was joking with a photographer and said something like, I'll give you $1,000 to make Marco Rubio look bad. Right? Literally on Twitter. I mean, obviously, this is joking between two guys, right? And literally they're like, see? He's out to get Marco Rubio. He sees Marco Rubio. They did this with Sean Duffy and some cabinet member about babysitting, where, the cabinet, I think it was Sean Duffy, said, definitely don't let these two babysit my kids. And that was a joke about, I think Stephen Miller was one of the people. And that was a joke about how those two guys will let their kids get away with too much, or they'll give them too much candy. And they spun it that they don't even trust these guys around their children. They don't trust. I mean, what?
You're right. And by the way, they did make Marco Rubio look bad, and I don't think they needed the $1,000 bribe to do it. The picture of him was horrific.
The photography is unbelievable.
All right, and so all of these things were summarized by the New York Times, and made it look much worse than it actually was. Let me give you the example. That one line: Trump has the personality of an alcoholic. Now let me give you the full quote. This is from Vanity Fair, not the New York Times. She attributes her ability to work with Mr. Trump to growing up with an alcoholic father, the sportscaster Pat Summerall. Quote, high-functioning alcoholics, or alcoholics in general, their personalities are exaggerated when they drink, she said. And so, I'm a little bit of an expert in big personalities. While Trump doesn't drink, she said, he has an alcoholic's personality and operates with a view that there's nothing he can't do. Nothing. Zero. Nothing. Now, if the New York Times wanted to, they could have pulled a quote and said, Susie Wiles says Trump operates with the view that there's nothing he can't do. They could have said that.
Yes.
That would have been an accurate quote. But instead they said he operates, he has a personality of an alcoholic, which makes him sound.
Or, if this were, someone in the Obama White House or someone in the Clinton, they would have said, this woman, drawing from her difficult childhood, right, recognizes working with challenging men from growing up with a challenging man. Like, they would have spun it. There's so many ways they could have done this.
Of course. But she was saying that the one aspect of an alcoholic's personality is that they're fearless and they believe they can accomplish anything.
Yeah,
and by the way, that's kind of what you want in a CEO or a president or a leader. So, but instead they pull, he has the personality of an alcoholic, which makes him sound reckless and erratic and damaging and uncontrollable, right? So it's just, again, another example of the Vanity Fair article not being nearly as bad, the New York Times article being a bastardization of what the actual interview was. But ultimately, she just shouldn't have sat for the interview.
No, that's true. But it is so fascinating, too, how anathema Trump is to what these publications see as the modern man. Weak, imposter syndrome,
right?
Sort of the feminization. We've talked a lot about the Longhouse and the constant drumbeat of men are toxic, men are bad, and Trump is really the opposite of that. He's confident, he'll do what he wants, he thinks he can do whatever he wants. That really is the opposite of what these publications see as the ultimate and sort of the good man. Yep. So of course they're going to paint him bad, and they're going to paint him in an unflattering way, and they're going to use her words. They're going to twist her words.
Of course, they always will. That's why you shouldn't sit for any print interviews. Never. Byron York, 8:05, Washington Examiner, will talk about the palace intrigue behind this, and I'll just leave you with your choices. You either think Susie Wiles is dumb, or naive, or just doesn't know what time it is and doesn't understand that the media is out to get her and the Trump administration, or this was a Machiavellian political jujitsu move for someone looking for their exit strategy so she can run the Marco Rubio campaign for 2028. The choice is yours. It's 6:25.
Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
WMAL. 6:37 now. Good morning. This Wednesday, 17th day of December, coming up at 7:05, Dr. Matthew Spalding of Hillsdale on his new book on our America's founding. 8:05, Byron York from Washington Examiner. 8:35, Greg Pemberton, head of the D.C. Police Union. Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
We're joined now by Cal Thomas. This 1 week before Christmas Eve. What do you call the day that's 1 week before Christmas Eve? There's got to be a name for that. Cal would know. Cal, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Dynamic Duo. Gee, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with twas the week before Christmas, and all through the House, there were nothing but Democrats calling Republicans a louse.
There it is.
There
Thank
you go.
Well done.
Wow.
Look at you. You got nothing on Vanity Fair writers. Hey, Cal, we've been doing a little reflection over the last couple of days over the week's events internationally. You had, of course, the horrific murder of Jews celebrating Hanukkah on the beach in Sydney, Australia. But then you also had the FBI thwarted a New Year's Eve terror attack in Los Angeles and Orange County. You had a couple of thwarted terror attacks at Christmas markets in Germany and in Poland. And you had Paris cancel their New Year's Eve celebration by the Arc de Triomphe because of potential terror attacks. Seems to be a pattern of behavior here, Cal.
Yeah, and of course the horrible murder of Rob Reiner and his wife. There's just a general lack of value of human life anymore. I mean, it started with abortion on demand and the millions of babies who've been killed, and this is just horrible to see. But at the root of it is, with the exception of the Rob Reiner business, is a strain of anti-Semitism that has raised its head again, and we haven't seen anything like it since World War II. This kind of stuff is taught and learned in universities, at dark websites, and it has to be confronted. And I don't mean just by statements saying that this is unacceptable and the rest. It has to be confronted in the universities. It has to be confronted on some of these websites. You know, the Prime Minister of Australia, a country which has, by the way, some of the toughest gun laws in the world, that's not working out very well, issues these statements. But he has allowed these demonstrations for months that have closed down the capital city of Sydney with signs that are anti-Israel, anti-Jew, anti-Zionist. He's allowed these things to go on. And when you do that, you give a tacit approval to this horrible ideology.
Absolutely. You know, that's definitely a common denominator, because the sites of those terror attacks are also the sites of these ongoing demonstrations where people are waving terrorist flags and chanting terrorist slogans. And those 4 who were arrested by the FBI in Southern California who were planning some sort of bombing for New Year's Eve, there's video of them engaged in street protests, again, for a free Palestine, with anti-Semitic statements on their signs. It's, you know, if you're engaged in that behavior, it's a clue that you're up to no good.
Well, this is incitement, and there ought to be something in the law. There is something in the law. I mean, the old cliche about you can't cry fire in a crowded theater when there's no fire. Well, there is a fire of a different kind in this, and the Jewish people are being targeted, obviously, not only with violent rhetoric, but by violent actions. And we've got to do something about it. I think all people of goodwill everywhere, regardless of their faith or their background, have got to stand up and support the Jewish people and say that this kind of stuff is terrible. You got people out there like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and other people who are allegedly on the far right, say, kind of encouraging this sort of thing. And it's worse than unacceptable. It should not be allowed in a free country. This is not free speech. This is incitement, and I think our laws should cover that, and there ought to be penalties for doing it.
Well, there's another problem here. You know, it just was shocking to hear the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, calling for gun control after this attack. I mean, there's another problem here. The voters keep electing. I mean, we have this in the United States, right? You look at Chicago under Lightfoot, and then they elect someone worse, right? So, you know, we have, I know I'm sort of veering away necessarily from the anti-Semitism, but not necessarily. This is happening in American cities all over the country, and voters seem to have the pain threshold that Americans have. It's just astonishing to me that the same horrible people who don't do anything about the treatment of Jews in this country, they keep getting elected, Cal. Isn't that part of the problem? It's the voters.
That is part. Yes, absolutely right. It's the old definition of insanity. But I want to get back to something you just touched on, this whole default position of the left that what we need is more gun control. If you are intent on killing somebody, you're going to find a way to do it. If you're intent on killing somebody with a gun, you're going to find a way to do the gun. Tell me a law that a lawbreaker will obey when it comes to guns, and I'll be for it. There isn't any. There just isn't any.
Well, and Cal, in Germany, I mean, they've ruined these Christmas markets because they have to put barriers up to keep vehicles from entering Christmas and plowing people down. So if it's not a gun, they'll find something.
Car control.
Well, this is Germany's problem and a lot of Europe's problem with the immigration. They wanted to show virtue signal, let all of these people in, like in Minnesota with the Somali community up there, and other places in Europe and around the world who allow people who don't share their values, who don't share their faith, who don't share their idea of pluralism and freedom of speech, freedom of the press, all the things we take for granted now, and they let them in. And now they have a problem with it. And this is what you've described is one of the problems, but it's not the only one.
Are you saying that marrying your sister to gain access to a foreign nation is not an American value?
You know, after the Supreme Court's ruling on same-sex marriage, Mitt Romney came out with a statement and said, if this continues, people are going to be able to marry their dog. Now, everybody laughed at that, but why not? The polygamists say they want to be next, so tell me what standard should be used to determine what the marriage relationship should be.
And what kind of dog are we talking about?
Yeah, or maybe your cat. Or your goldfish.
Oh, no, that's crazy. Cal, we'll talk to you next week. Thanks,
All right, guys.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Well, it was a Hanukkah party for the ages last night in the White House, and our very own Mark Levin, who took the night off, giving me the opportunity to fill in for him because it's really all about me, Julie Gunlock, don't you know? Our very own Mark Levin and his incredible bride, Julie, were summoned up to the podium when President Trump was making remarks. And Mark kind of stole the show, putting his arm around Trump. I have been the target of Mark Levin's hugs before. And I have to say, and as Meredith calls it, it's like a Godfather hug, where he puts his hand sort of at the nape of your neck and lets you know that he owns you.
Well, this picture, Trump looks so amused.
He does.
By the arm around
But
him.
so you notice how his hand is up by the nape of the neck. It's like right there, like where he can give like the Vulcan death pinch if he wants. Exactly. But listen to Mark Levin here, extolling the virtues of our president on this Hanukkah celebration.
You like Israel.
Hold on. And he loves Israel, too.
It's true.
2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. 6 years ago, I was up here, and I said, this is our first Jewish president.
It's true.
Now he's the first Jewish president to serve two not consecutive presidencies. We thank you
That's
for
right.
everything.
That's right. Bad things happened on the second one. Namely, the election was rigged. And we found out, and you see that happening.
Never miss
And you are the greatest
Thank
president.
you very much.
And God bless you. I miss you.
What a scene. And it really did seem to be a great celebration. Our friend Katie Pavlich, who just got news that she's starting her brand new primetime show on News Nation soon and leaving Fox, she was there and sending some pretty great pictures, and it looked like quite an event.
Very fun. Very fun.
I'm thinking of converting just so I can get an invite. It's 6:52.